All right, it's the Ruben Jay show, and you already know I got somebody special this week. I'm super excited to be talking to this gentleman right here. He's an author, he's a pastor, he's a social media influencer, he's a radio host. He's got a whole bunch of stuff going on. Please welcome to the show, Mr. Bobby Conway. How you doing?
Doing good, Ruben. Thanks for having me on, bro.
Thanks for doing this, man. We this came together pretty quickly, and I appreciate you being so quick to respond to me on that as well.
You
Um,
bet.
one of the things that I love about Bobby, I'm gonna talk about him like he's not here for a second, is during back in 2019, early 2020, I was working for a California Christian radio station called K Wave, which uh, houses the nationally syndicated Pastor's Perspective program. And Bobby came in about in the middle of my run at K Wave and was super cool to me, super down to earth, and was willing to answer all the questions I had about everything. Gave me a bunch of his, refused to take my money. I don't know if you remember this. I wanted to buy books from him, and he refused to take my money, and he just gave me the books. And so ever since then, I've really just wanted to sit down and chat with you about just kind of what got you to where you're at today,
Mm,
because I think that you're just who you are and what you've done in your life is just super incredible. So that's where I'm going to start. Is
mm.
tell me a little bit about what brought you to being somebody who formerly known as the 1 minute apologist, but now Christianity still makes sense as the new branding. What got you to the point where you were doing these videos where you were doing these 1 minute ish videos kind of explaining Christianity? Like how did you get to that point?
Yeah. Well, Ruben, uh, when I started the YouTube channel, 1 Minute Apologist, back in 2009, I didn't have a clue what YouTube was. I really give the credit to uh, Kevin Peoples, who is a friend and film director today of some different Christian movies. He just had an eye for technology. I had the idea of creating short videos, maybe in a black and white kind of context, where I'm just giving credible answers to curious questions. I wish I would have known what these young kids know today as it relates to algorithms and all of that back then, because we really could have done something special with that. I mean, it still was used in great ways and God blessed it, but I mean, it could have been so much more had I known how to start properly. We were just figuring it out as we went. But the way that I got into apologetics was through evangelism. Back when I was in college, I had a burden for doing outreach. And so I would go out to campuses, connect with people, get in gospel conversations, and get stumped constantly with questions that I didn't know the answer to. And so their questions became my study guide that the Holy Spirit would use in my life. And I started formulating answers to the questions. So it began as a tool to help me as an evangelist, as a young Christian. Then what happened? Apologetics became a tool for me when I slipped into several years where I saw my faith deconstructing, but I hated my doubts. I wasn't looking to become a progressive Christian. I wasn't looking to move beyond the faith. I wanted answers to the questions, but my brain was producing questions faster than I could track the answers down. So I had to learn how to live with unanswered questions. I had to live with my finitude. And so that was tough. And so then the third area of interest in helping shape me as an apologist was being a pastor and wanting to make sure that the church is equipped to know how to engage the culture around some of the big metaphysical questions that are asked today. And so I felt like apologetics, it created a bad taste in many people's mouths long ago because of maybe the over black and white approach or the self-righteousness or arguing about every little thing. I really am passionate about offering a conversational apologetic that can help those be equipped who want to do evangelism, help those who are doubting, and help the church be equipped as well to understand what their worldview is. And so I think that what I do with our ministry is provide that kind of help.
It's awesome, man. And I've always thought that, for the last, I think, at least since 2010, I felt that pastors have underutilized social media, in my opinion.
Hmm.
And I know you just launched a church not too long ago, but I've always, I feel like the church has just overall not used social media to their advantage, and they
Hmm.
tend to use it as a way to just feed. Hey, here's what's coming up in a couple of weeks. Here's the next sermon. Remember the potluck on Sunday night. All this stuff, and I looked through your YouTube channel when you first came to K-Wave, and I remember going through this and be like, this is what the church needs, is going out there and answering these questions and being bold about our stances as a church, and doing it in a way that, like you said, was conversational. Like I never felt like when I watched your videos that I was listening to a dissertation or a doctrinal level lecture. I felt like I was at a coffee shop listening to somebody talk in a group setting, and it
Hmm.
was very conversational, and I've always appreciated that about you. um
Thank
how
you.
how have you been able to, as it's become more popular to hate on people who preach the gospel and preach the truth, how have you been able to continuously put out this content without feeling attacked? Or how do you navigate those attacks too? Because I think there are a lot of people who I think are young Christians who want to do something similar and put their faith out there, and they get attacked the minute they say something as
Hmm.
simple as Jesus is the king of my life. How do you navigate that portion of your ministry?
I don't spend a lot of time reading what people say about my videos because I know that I'm going to have a lot of stuff that would trigger me probably, right? So I go on and I'd be like, what's this person talking about? Ignorance is bliss in that way for me, Ruben. I don't always
Love that.
go check that stuff out. Like there's a lot of people in my life that are a lot more aware of what people are saying than I am. Now that is both foolish and wise. It's foolish because I remain ignorant, but it's wise because it protects me from getting too worked up about stuff. Overall, though, I just anticipate that. So I don't feel like it really does fuel me. I feel like for the most part, I just realize that no matter who you are, Christian, even not a Christian, the moment you put your voice out there, you have critics. And so the quicker we accept that, the better off we're going to be. And as a guy that wants to please people, like I didn't wake up this morning, I don't want enemies. I don't want people listening to this show that we're doing right now to not like me or to not like you. But I can't help that. And so the danger is if we start living for man's approval, then we'll start trying to control things. We'll be manipulative, and all that just breeds insecurity in our life. And so I feel like one of the things that helps is just remembering my identity, knowing as much as I can ahead of time what the objections are. So I'm not shocked when people raise the objections. Sometimes people just like to be mean and curt, and really just try to see that as a commentary on themselves. Like people think that they're being like, I got you here. And I go, I just see that it's just so shallow because I wouldn't really want to jump on people's social media and just, blast them and be mean for no reason. That's not helpful to anybody. So I think people are showing their own immaturity in that. But I will say, Ruben, if I was younger, it would be a lot harder for me in the social media realm because when I was, in particular, a teenager in my 20s, that people pleasing side it was strong. God's really worked a lot of that out of me. I don't know that would ever die. And I think it's okay to, want people to connect with you. That's good. I mean, because that will help you to have some EQ, some relational sensitivity that some people minimize, but not to the point of not being willing to say what needs to be said, and being silenced by it. So that's kind of how I work at it. I just realized the older I get, the more secure I become in these type of things. And you realize you just get burned enough in life to know who your real friends are And I just want to be a voice right now. I mean, we have so much absurdity going on in our culture today, Ruben, that we need people to come up. Like, everybody's out of the closet except the Christian. It's time to come out of the closet and be a voice. Like, we all need to see where we are and stand together and quit fearing rejection. Jesus, I mean, he called his disciples that way constantly. And so I think people want to be bold, but maybe they don't feel good about the church they're in, or they don't think that there's a good overall vision for the church at large. They're worried about, hey, I'm going to get bold, but am I going to be alone in doing this? Or can I take people to my church and my pastor, be a man of conviction, stand up and preach the word? So sometimes the silence is extended because people don't have the right context when they get bold to bring people into.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I feel like, especially with, the culture war, which I don't want to dive into, too much here, because, that's not the purpose of this particular conversation. But, I feel bad for the everyday Christian whose heart just yearns to reach out to people and then just don't really know how to get them connected in any other way, because they're, you know, their church may not be the strongest in, actually calling out sin when there's sin in the church. And, or the pastor might only care about, that Sunday morning sermon. And I agree. I think, like you said, it's time for the Christians to come out of the closet as a group and just boldly confess and profess the name of the Lord. And that's the journey that I've been on, the last year or so, is like, how do I love people who, how do I openly love people who hate me, and hate what I stand for, because it's a difficult conversation to have these conversations with people who, who are well intentioned and want everyone to feel great, but because we believe in biological science, we're the enemy of the people. So it's an interesting place that we're at. And I want to pivot a little bit here and talk a little bit about, you joining, Pastor's Perspective a couple years ago in K-Wave, and kind of what brought you to that particular point in time, because that was an interesting pivot at the time, because I don't remember the gentleman's name who was doing it beforehand, but he was really well loved and well liked, and
a
lot of people, a lot of people just weren't ready for that change at the time, and I don't think there's ever a good time for a widely popular program to have a change in cast. It's never fun. But what brought you to Pastor's Perspective in K-Wave?
Yeah. And Don Stewart, what a great Christian man. I had the privilege of being on the program with him a couple of times when Pastor Brian Broderson was bringing me in and just let me do some fill-ins. And so I really, appreciate what Don offered to Pastor's Perspective. I think Brian and I really hit it off in our relationship. There was just some great relational chemistry. And so one of the things that Brian was thinking about was kind of the future of the program. And so Don had been on the show for several years at that point, and Brian was interested in kind of building out a team. And I feel like philosophically we were nicely aligned on some of these things. And so after several months of just being a fill-in from time to time, Lance at the radio show, offered me the job to be Brian's co-host. And so I was very humbled by that. I love working with Brian and Brian Perez and the other team. So what Pastor Brian has done is he's built out a fuller team where you've got, Tony Stewart, Phil Metzger, Mike Chaddick, John Wong, and myself. I'm kind of that consistent piece that's on each day. But Brian has done a lot of change as it relates to the program as a whole. And honestly, it's one of the highlights of my day. I just love the program. I love the people, and I'm really humbled to be a part of it.
Now, were you experienced in radio at all, or is that your first time like doing that kind of consistently?
I was experienced with radio, not having my own show, but being an apologist with a national platform before that afforded me the opportunity to be interviewed by lots of different Christian apologists, from Greg Koukl to Hank Hanegraaff to Frank Turek. So I was on all kinds of different radio shows, Family Life Today, that gave me some time on that. But what's interesting, Ruben, about Pastor's perspective is I used to listen to the program when I was in seminary at Dallas Theological in the early 2000s. And so I would drive home from work listening. And this was back when you even had like you could still leverage the cassette tape and record. And man, I would do everything I could because I loved listening to these guys answer questions. And this is when Chuck Smith was on. And last thing I ever thought is I would be sitting in that, seat and being a part of that. But in God's providence, I've always been drawn to answering questions. I have a very curious mind. I ask a lot of questions, almost obsessively so. So a lot of the books and stuff that I read through the years would be books that would answer questions. And but I also feel like there's an art to answering questions, a cadence to answering questions. In particular, in this culture, we want to be able to converse with people where an apologist tend to start with the defense right away. And I would rather be able to get to the defense, but look for a way to validate something if I can. So if somebody asks a question, my tendency is not to give them an answer immediately. I'm more looking to connect with them, because if they connect with me, I feel like they can digest my response better. So somebody asked me a question about being gay, so to speak, and they're struggling with it. I would want to say something before just diving right into it. Say, I'm sorry that you're struggling in this way. I'm sorry if you've been hurt by the church. I can't understand what it would feel like to have same-sex attractions and to be told that I can't act out on that. I can't imagine if the roles were reversed and it was wrong to act out on heterosexual relationships. So I'm sorry for that. At the same token, I don't want to compromise what I feel in my heart and in the word. Can I have the opportunity to share with you how it is that I feel like we can have a relationship together, and yet it doesn't mean we're going to agree necessarily, but can I hold to what I believe? Because I'm going to tell you, I'm going to still love you even if you don't agree with me, but I would hope that you could see how I arrive here. And I think that those kind of layups are much more fruitful than just jumping right in. So I think apologetics has to address the person, deal with the person, not just give the propositions.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. And I enjoy the Brian Bobby combo on Pastor's perspective. I think you guys need to get another letter in there, maybe an R. I'm just kidding.
Another R. Yeah, an R.
So let's pivot to your church now, because a couple of years ago, I think in the middle of the pandemic, you announced that you were moving across the country to start a church, Image Church. And I know you guys are kind of firing on all cylinders now, it looks like, from what I can see. Tell me a little bit more about being called into being, a senior pastor of your own church.
Yeah. Well, I did serve as a lead pastor for 14 years before I went to California. I grew up in California, and then I did a lot of my ministry in the South because my wife's from the South. So I pastored out in North Carolina for 14 years. But when I went to California for a few years, it was nice just to decompress. We had experienced some tough times, literally burnt out on ministry. I had a relapse after nearly 23 years of sobriety. I mean, I was just hanging on. And I just felt like, man, I need to resign, pull away from everything that's going on. And that's where Pastor Brian was so beautiful. Like, I mean, he just loved me, showed me so much grace, gave me opportunities, and really was this kind-hearted shepherd in my life. And I was having some space to heal. When COVID hit, I really found myself thinking about the church again. I was kind of hurt and burned by the church, leadership people in particular, and had to deal with some of that stuff, which took some time. But what happened is Pastor Brian was having me preach some, and he said, you need to be in the pulpit, Bobby. That's what God's gifted you to do, to preach God's word. And so my wife and kids, we would just be sitting in the hot tub in Southern California having conversations in COVID. What does the church need to look like in a post-COVID world? What are some things that we need to learn about what we've done wrong in ministry, what we could do differently, how we could work better as a family? And there was so much healing in our family, Ruben, during that time in California. And in watching Pastor Brian as a mentor, my boss, and as a friend, just model compassion, humility, spirit-led leadership, I just found myself getting excited about the opportunity again. And so we felt like we had some unfinished work to do out here in Charlotte. And so we came out and we do the things that a church would typically do, but kind of our main distinctives at Image Church is we said in a post-COVID world, we really need to do something about the mental health crisis. And, my relapse was a part of my mental health crisis in my own life. And my family knows what it's like together. Just we struggle with some mental health issues, each of us, and we're open and real and raw about that. And we felt like, what would it look like to kind of create that AA culture in a church where there's a lot of authenticity, transparency, and we do what we can to help people. So my wife and I created a mental health crash course that's produced through Right Now Media. We talk about it all the time, and we're just trying to tell people that, everything's not always a moral issue like the church makes it be. Sometimes it is mental health. It's not always a mental health only like the culture makes it. Sometimes it's a moral issue. But we're not a shaming center. We're a healing center. We invite you here. So that was a distinctive. Another distinctive we felt like in a post-COVID world was our readiness to deal with equipping the church with worldview. We know that there was all kinds of people walking away from the faith. And so we felt like the church isn't doing a good job at large in equipping people with apologetics. And we felt like if we do not start giving people answers, progressive Christianity is going to get really, really large. And that's not good. And then thirdly, diversity. Now, ethnic diversity is one feature, which we're really excited about, seeing Black and white and Asian and Hispanic be together, but young and old. So the way this shakes out, for example, I'm teaching Discipleship University, which we launched last night. We're doing a series called Constructing a Case for Christianity. Why is that? Because that's part of one of our distinctives to equip people with apologetics. I've invited 5 teachers in the congregation to help me: an African-American male, an African-American female, a white female, and then 2 kids in their 20s, one being my son. So there's all kinds of diversity, but we're doing teamwork, equipping people for apologetics. We had 60 people on a Monday night come out to get trained in apologetics. It was just a great night.
That's awesome. That's really awesome. And can I just zero in on the first distinctive for a second? Because
Sure.
I really feel like that's one of the biggest parts of misunderstanding between leadership a lot of times and congregants. I've heard story after story after story of people who are struggling with mental illness, clinical depression, eating disorders, all these different things. And churches have found out that this person's struggling in some way, shape, or form. And instead of coming in and supporting and being like, hey, let's pray together, let's look at scripture together, let's make sure that we're here to counsel you when you need counseling, here's some resources that we have, the church turns around and says something along the lines of, you don't need that antidepressant, you don't, you just need to learn to eat, you just need to get out of the funk, you need to, you need to listen to Jesus more, all the kind of, I don't even know how to describe it, but all it ends up doing is hurting the person who's struggling, because the person who's struggling feels like they're not a good enough Christian, and that's why they're dealing with depression or an eating disorder or whatever, or these struggles. For you, if and I do have a couple other pastors who listen to this, and I hope that they can take some advice here. Do you have any advice for them for when somebody comes to them and says, hey, I'm dealing with this, with depression or whatever that mental, capacity is, what advice do you have for them?
Hmm. I do think sometimes as Christians, our moral meter is always ready to go off, or our doctrinal meter. And there's wisdom in that, right? We want to be discerning about, right and wrong. We want to be discerning about theology, but we don't want to miss the person. We don't want to miss the ministry while we deliver our message. And so what I would say is realize that that's a person in front of you. And if that person has come to you, number one, they're already walking out in trust and trusting themselves to you. Don't take that lightly. Number two, realize they're probably already feeling quite a bit of shame, and validate that. So I think about when I had my relapse. I mean, the panic, it was unbelievable. Like I, you know what I wish somebody would have done, Ruben, is just say something like this: Bobby, I can't imagine how you must be feeling having had a relapse after 23 years of sobriety. The shame's probably overwhelming. And yes, we need to address what caused that, and we'll tackle some of that stuff. But I just want you to know that we're going to walk with you through this. We love you. You're going to be safe with us. You know what I heard? Oh, we got to tell the body. We got to let the body know. We got to let the body know. And all that did was just create total panic. It was like, yes, I didn't argue with the fact that we need to let the body know. But if I had a pastor on staff that had a relapse, I wouldn't feel like I got to hurry up and rush and tell everybody in the community and tell the body. I would feel like there comes a place for that. I have to have the wisdom to know I've got a pastor that just had a relapse. And if he's an alcoholic, that can be deadly. I could send him to the grave, like if I'm not careful here. They just operated with zero empathy and total left brain, logical, black and white, and dealt with it on a moral level. And it was agonizing. And it was but for the grace of God that he held me together. So I think that we want people to know that we're there for them. We love them. They're people. And we're going to deal with, if there's consequences that are coming here, we'll deal with that. But let's not just meet the person with, here's the consequences. Let's meet them with, let's remember the gospel together. And let's remember that, you know what, someday I might need that. What made my relapse so painful is it was unthinkable to me, Ruben. I would sit there and I go, I can't imagine a staff person coming to me and just freaking out the way that they did. I just can't even imagine it. It would just be like, I would get that we have to have these discussions. I'm not minimizing what I did at all. But, in AA, there's a statement: if you got a gun in one hand and a bottle in another, take the drink. In other words, when you get to the point when you're so utterly desperate and you can't see maybe even God for hope, and people can get there. And, I know there could be a self-righteous Christian that can't get that. They go, well, you shouldn't get there. Yeah, that's true. You shouldn't. And unfortunately for me, Ruben, Jesus wasn't enough. And that was where I was wrong. I hate that. I hate that I didn't know how to just sit in my pain. I just wasn't able to do it. And I caved. But you know what? That's better than taking your life, right? And in God, and what was so amazing is, contrary to the leadership, the grace that I sensed from the Holy Spirit and from God was unbelievable. Built me back up, gave me a role on pastor's perspective, gave me another church, rebuilt my family, and showed me why I had that relapse to begin with. But it was the Spirit of God that walked me to the core. And I think church leaders should help in that way too.
Yeah, I find it funny that instead of saying, hey, let's get you into treatment, let's find, a good treatment center to get you in and get that part figured out. And then, once after a couple of weeks, we'll address the body and let them know what's going on, and like that, to me, like if I would like to say that if it were me in the position overseeing, you as a pastor, as an elder or whatever, and you came to me and you said, hey, I relapsed, or it became apparent that you relapsed, I'd come to you and say, hey, listen, let's get you in a treatment center. The body will find out when the body finds out. We're not going to hide it from them, but let's make sure that we can get you in a place where you can start refocusing on sobriety and on your relationship with the Lord. And then we'll do the part that needs to happen. Because yes, accountability needs to be there and the body needs to
Absolutely.
know what's happening with their leadership. But the first thing shouldn't be release a press release. You know,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
let's pray. Let's get you in a counseling center, and then we'll address the situation, man. That I'm sorry that happened to you, man. I know on the other side of it, you know, God's goodness ends up prevailing no matter what.
Yeah.
But I'm still sorry you had to go through that, dude.
No, thanks, bro. I mean, yeah, it just helped me to want to be more empathetic and compassionate to people. And I suppose too, Ruben, I mean, there are certain things, right, that you have to act more quickly on. If you had somebody involved like in pedophilia inside the church and that was going on, I mean, that warrants a quicker response. You could still love the person and let them know, but hey, that warrants a quicker response. I think that when you're a lead pastor, you can't be quiet for too long. I mean, you got to have some kind of a message. The big thing for me is I just wanted to be the one to share with the body, kind of like what I did with you. Hey, here's what's went down. Let me share what's going on. And the big pain came as I was told I was going to be a part of that process, but I was empty nesting our daughter in California, and they made the announcement, and I was supposed to be there. And so then
See,
when the
that's
announcement
worse.
was made, yeah, and they weren't, and they didn't say what I did. They said, Bobby slipped back into some of his old ways. Well, what does that mean? I mean, Bobby was totally promiscuous before the Lord got a hold of me. So I had people wondering if there was rumors going around that I had an affair. Is he sniffing lines and all that? And so it was hard enough to have to deal with the truth, but because it was so poorly handled,
Yeah.
I would have just said what happened, right? So that was what was hard, like, hey, yeah, there wasn't an affair. It wasn't like I was out trying to, I wasn't drinking and sitting in bars and looking for anything. I was just really, really hurting. And there was a lot of reasons. There was a lot of hurt going on. We were watching our son go through a ton of depression. And as a father, just to watch that, it was agonizing. I mean, he was very, very empty, and that was hard for me. I was doubting my faith at times, and that was hard. And I just think sometimes I love the book of Jude where it says, "Be merciful to those who doubt." I think that sometimes we make people feel shame, and maybe one of the reasons people don't talk about their doubts in the church is because they don't feel safe. And we use language. I was speaking this past weekend on the topic of divorce, Ruben, to the church, and I said, I said, I want to teach this message in such a way that you absolutely feel loved by me if you've had a divorce, but you also feel like I didn't compromise what the word would say in this moment. And I was like, that's kind of what I'm trying to put together here. But the fact is life is messy for people and life hurts for people. And we just need to be more empathetic. And sometimes what we do is, oh, this person's going through a divorce. Let's church discipline them. And I said, I don't like the term church discipline. And I said, the reason why is I don't think it promotes transparency. And I like church restoration, because if I blow it and I know I've got a leadership team that wants to restore me, man, I'll feel a lot more safe. But if you just want to discipline me, I don't like the term even as much. I think we need this stuff, like God disciplines those he loves. I'm not saying we don't need it. I'm just saying we have to recognize we want to create a safe culture. So when I think about like accountability partners, man, what I really want is a friend it's bigger than, I don't just want to meet with somebody that's asking me how my thought life is. I want somebody that loves me and wants to know what books I'm reading and wants to know what movies I like and wants to know what keeps me up at night and what I'm dreaming about and how's my thought life. And so I feel like sometimes, again, it's just, let's make sure your morals are good. Let's make sure you're disciplined if they're not. Let's make sure we let everybody know. And we miss the fact that the church is a hospital for sick people. And all of us are diseased. And I think sometimes people feel like they're the ones walking around inoculating everybody and have it all figured out. And the sooner we realize that we're all just a moral mess, in need of a gospel that cleans us up, the better off the church will be.
Yeah, man, I can't agree with you anymore. I feel like if we were in a church service right now, there'd be some keyboard going on in the background and some people saying "Amen, Pastor" in the background, because that was an amen moment. I know we're short on time here, and I wish we had more time to talk about your YouTube channel, what you're going through, the next phase of it. But tell me more about Christianity Still Makes Sense, because I love that, and I love what your plans are. So please tell us more about that YouTube channel and what you're going to be doing there.
Yeah, so 1 Minute Apologist went through a rebranding, and so we still offer 2 shorts a week, and so under the umbrella of Christianity Still Makes Sense, we offer 2 1 Minute Apologist short videos. So we kept it in that fashion, but Christianity Still Makes sense of my ministry better in a broader way, because I do more than just short videos. So everything kind of falls under that umbrella, be it my teaching ministry, the books that I've written, pastor's perspective. We're just trying to make sense of people's questions. So really that is my heartbeat. I just want to say that Christianity still makes sense. I mean, people have objections, and we're confused at times about our belief, because of pluralism and all the different competing ideas in the internet. We need to talk about these things, but there is a way forward in this time for the church. And doubt's not a Christian problem, it's a human problem. In the absence of certainty, there's always going to be room for doubt. The question is, which worldview best closes the doubt gap? And I think Christianity makes best sense of the cumulative case, pound for pound, against any other worldview. That's not to say we don't have some difficulties. That's not to say that there's things that don't make sense to me at times, like some of the bizarre things in the Bible. But pound for pound, putting it all together, I think Christianity can make sense of things better than atheism. For example, atheism, how do they make sense of free will, near-death experiences, consciousness, objective morality, how the universe came here? Well, I think that Christianity can make sense of objective morality, free will, consciousness, near-death experiences, and the universe came in existence from God. So there's some areas that, okay, you don't have some of these weird miracle pieces taking place on atheism, but Christianity you do. But then if you admit God, then miracles are possible. On atheism, you struggle with the fact that, well, why doesn't they struggle with Christians because God doesn't intervene if he's a just God right away. But on atheism, you have no ultimate justice for people like Pol Pot, Mussolini. They get away with it because there's no ultimate justice. So that pound for pound thing, we try to show that Christianity still makes sense. And so we've got the podcast for that people can subscribe to. Christianity Still Makes Sense. They could subscribe to the YouTube channel. They can go to the website, ChristianityStillMakesSense.com. And I've got a book that's already written with Tyndale Publishers that comes out in April 2024. So it's quite a ways off. And there'll be a small group curriculum that's designed to go along with it to help the church get into a conversation about why Christianity still makes sense, to help those who are deconstructing. So I want to help those deconstructing and with doubts to stay in there, to hang in there. And I want to equip the church to not go that route either. That's the goal.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate the work that you're doing, man. Lord bless you, man. I love seeing everything that's going on there. Tell everybody where they can find you on social media, man. And you got to come back at some point.
Yes, you bet. Would love to. So they can go to, ChristianityStillMakesSense.com for the website. The YouTube channel is Christianity Still Makes Sense. The podcast, as I said, Christianity Still Makes Sense. I don't know, isn't this terrible? Shows how good I am at Instagram. What my YouTube handle is. I think it's like at Dr. Bobby Conway or something. My teammate set that up. My Facebook, I think it's the same thing, at Dr. Bobby Conway. But if they type my name in, Christianity Still Makes Sense, they'll discover that and help. I'd love for them to follow what we do.
I'll put the links in the description of the podcast. That way people can find you a little bit easier as well. Bobby, thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you, Ruben. God bless you, bro.
You too, my friend.